I want you to just imagine for a second that you're holding a physical classified document right in your
It's
hands.
like a real heavy file folder.
Exactly. You can feel the weight of it. You open it up, and stamped right at the top is document ID N09823B.
Yeah, and the contents of that file are, well, they're chillin', frankly.
Extremely chilling,
Mm-hmm.
because what we have here is an exclusive leak. We're doing a deep dive today into a massive, heavily guarded secret about the very bottom of our own world.
Right. And what's so fascinating about this dossier isn't just the raw data, it's the conflict it exposes.
The internal friction, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. You have this incredibly sanitized official government narrative clashing violently with, well, with terrifying biological anomalies.
Right. Anomalies that completely break our understanding of reality. And for you listening,
Mm.
we need to set the scene here. We're talking about the Mariana Trench.
The absolute basement of the Earth.
Right. Nearly 36,000 feet down. That's 11,000 meters straight into a pitch-black abyss.
It's a scale that is almost impossible for the human brain to process.
It really is. I mean, think about this. If you took commercial airliners, right, and you stack them end to end, nose to tail,
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
yeah, you would have to stack over 150 of them just to reach the bottom. Or think of the Grand Canyon. You could drop the entire Grand Canyon down there, and it would still be miles underwater.
Miles beneath the surface, yeah.
And the dossier points out this insane irony, right? We have spent billions, I mean, literally billions of dollars mapping dead moons and looking up at the stars.
Right, looking outward.
Yeah. But 95% of our own ocean is a complete and total mystery. Like, we've put more human feet on the dusty surface of the moon than we have at the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Which is wild when you think about it, but from an engineering standpoint, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Wait, really? Because you'd think space is, the ultimate hostile environment.
We would think that, sure. But the deep ocean is, I mean, in many ways, it is far less forgiving than the vacuum of space.
How so? Like, because of the pressure?
Exactly. So look, when aerospace engineers design a capsule for space, they only have to keep 1 atmosphere of pressure inside.
Right, to keep the astronauts breathing.
Yeah, against 0 pressure outside in the vacuum, you're basically just keeping a balloon inflated. It wants to push out, but you contain it.
Okay, I'm with you.
But when marine engineers build a submersible for the Mariana Trench, the physics completely invert. You aren't holding pressure in. You are actively trying to stop thousands of atmospheres of pressure from crushing your vessel inward.
Oh, wow. So instead of a balloon popping, it's like a soda can getting crushed.
A soda can being crushed by the weight of a freight train. Down there, the hydrostatic pressure is over 15,000 pounds per square inch.
15,000. I can't even picture what that physical force looks like. At sea level, what are we at, like 14 pounds?
14.7 pounds per square inch, yes. So we are talking about over 1,000 times the pressure of the surface world.
That is insane. How do marine biologists how do they demonstrate that kind of force?
Well, there's actually a really famous, simple demonstration they do. They take a regular, standard styrofoam coffee cup.
Like the kind you get at a gas station.
Exactly, just a cheap styrofoam cup. They strap it to the outside of a deep-sea submersible, and they send it down into the bathypelagic zone.
Okay.
Now, styrofoam is mostly just tiny pockets of air trapped inside a polymer structure.
Right.
So as the sub descends, the sheer uniform weight of the ocean essentially squeezes every single microscopic pocket of air completely out of the material.
So what happens to the cup?
When the sub comes back to the surface, that normal-sized coffee cup is still perfectly cup-shaped,
Uh-huh.
but it has been uniformly shrunk down to the size of a thimble.
You are kidding. A thimble.
Completely compressed. And, I mean, take that image, right? And apply that exact same hydrostatic force to living tissue.
Oh, my God.
To cellular membranes, to bone.
It would just instantly crush a normal human body.
Without a doubt.
So we're talking about an environment that is totally devoid of sunlight. Because light can't even penetrate that far down, right?
Right. It's absolute pitch darkness.
And the ambient pressure physically crushes cellular structures. So it makes total sense why we've only seen about 5% of it.
Yeah, it's inaccessible to us.
But, and this is where the dossier really gets into the weeds, think about the statistical probability here.
Right.
If you've only ever turned a flashlight on in 5% of a massive pitch black room,
You're going to miss things.
you're going to miss almost everything. The probability that we have completely bypassed ancient massive ecosystems isn't just some fun sci-fi theory. It is a statistical guarantee.
And We really have to remember to think about the ocean volumetrically.
What do you mean by volumetrically?
Like, it's not just a flat map. It's a massive three-dimensional biome. The ocean actually constitutes the vast majority of all livable space on Earth.
Oh, right, because it goes down for miles.
Exactly. So having 95% of that three-dimensional space completely uncharted, it means our entire baseline for what exists on this planet is profoundly incomplete.
We're essentially just guessing what's down there based on the tiny little top layer we can actually read.
We absolutely are.
Which, well, that brings us right to the core event of document N09823b.
Right, the 1997 incident.
Yes, because while human eyes and cameras couldn't survive in that 95% blind spot, human ears actually heard something come out of it.
And it was something that shouldn't have been possible.
Exactly. Let's talk about the acoustic anomaly they call the bloop, because the dossier shifts here from just ocean context to this highly specific, highly debated event.
Yeah, so in the summer of 1997, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA,
Right.
they picked up this ultra-low frequency sound on their hydrophone arrays in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. And the raw data from that sound just defied almost every existing acoustic model they had.
So before we dive into the actual sound itself, we need to explain how they even heard it. The file talks a lot about these hydrophones, and it specifically references something called the SOSUS network.
Yes, the sound surveillance system.
Yeah, so what exactly is a hydrophone, and why on earth do we have an entire network of them scattered across the Pacific floor?
Well, a hydrophone is essentially just a highly sensitive underwater microphone, but the SOSUS network itself has a fascinating history. It was actually a classified military apparatus.
Wait, military, like Cold War stuff?
Exactly. It was deployed by the United States during the Cold War. The entire original purpose of SOSUS was to track the faint acoustic signatures of Soviet nuclear submarines moving through the deep ocean.
Oh, wow. So it's basically an underwater tripwire system.
That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah.
But when the Cold War ended, the military didn't really need it for that anymore, so they essentially handed the keys to this multi-billion-dollar acoustic network over to civilian scientists at NOAA.
Okay, so the scientists use it to listen to whales and earthquakes and stuff.
Right, to monitor seismic activity and marine mammal migrations. So you have this incredibly sophisticated array of listening posts tethered deep in the water column. It's acting as a blind sensory net across the entire Pacific.
And then, in 1997, that multi-billion-dollar net gets absolutely slammed.
Slammed is the right word.
Because the dossier outlines that this ultra-low frequency event, it was picked up by hydrophones that were over 3,000 miles apart.
Which is staggering.
I mean, 3,000 miles. For you listening, imagine standing in Times Square in New York, right? And you produce a sound so physically loud, so forceful, that a microphone sitting in Los Angeles picks it up clearly.
It sounds impossible.
Right. How does a sound wave even maintain enough integrity to push through 3,000 miles of dense ocean water? Doesn't water muffle sound?
Normally, yes. But to understand how it traveled that far, we have to talk about the mechanics of the SOFAR channel. It stands for sound fixing and ranging. You see, the ocean isn't just one uniform body of water. It actually has distinct layers that are determined by temperature, pressure, and salinity.
Okay, like a layer cake of water.
Exactly. And the speed of sound in water depends heavily on those exact factors. So as you go deeper, the temperature drops, right? It gets colder.
And that cold actually slows sound down. But at the very same time, as you go deeper, the pressure increases. And increased pressure speeds sound up.
Wait, so you have two opposing physical forces acting on the sound wave at the exact same time?
Precisely. And at a very specific depth, usually around 1,000 meters down, those two opposing factors perfectly cancel each other out.
Oh, wow.
This creates a unique layer where the speed of sound is at its absolute minimum. And this is the SOFAR channel.
So what happens when a sound hits that specific layer?
When a sound wave is generated within that channel, or enters it, the physics of refraction keep bending the sound wave back toward the center of the channel.
So it can't escape. Right. It acts as an acoustic waveguide. It's almost like a giant natural fiber optic cable for sound. The wave gets trapped in this horizontal plane so it doesn't scatter up to the surface, and it doesn't scatter down to the ocean floor.
It just shoots straight out.
It travels outward horizontally, losing incredibly little energy over vast, vast distances.
Okay, so that perfectly explains the delivery mechanism, right? The SOFAR channel is the fiber optic cable. But the dossier focuses really heavily on the initial energy of the sound itself.
Yes.
Like, it specifically compares the acoustic power of the bloop to a blue whale.
Yeah.
And it states that this anomaly was several times louder than the loudest known animal on the entire planet.
And we really have to be precise about what louder means in an underwater context because it's different than in the air.
Because of water density.
Right. Decibels in water are measured with a different reference pressure, but regardless of the specific math, the sheer energy output required is phenomenal.
How loud is a blue whale, just for context?
Yeah. A blue whale can produce calls that reach around 188 underwater decibels.
Which is huge.
Massive. They do this to communicate across entire ocean basins. But the sound detected in 1997, it completely dwarfed those blue whale calls.
See, this is where I have to push back on the physics of a biological source. I mean, look, a blue whale has a heart the size of a car.
Right. It weighs hundreds of thousands to pound.
Exactly. So if it takes an organ chamber that massive just to hit 188 decibels, how could any fleshy vocal cord or biological air sac physically move enough water to create a sound several times louder?
That is the big question.
Wouldn't the sheer acoustic energy of making a noise that loud literally tear the creature's own biological tissues apart?
And that is the exact logistical paradox that the researchers were facing. Sound is fundamentally vibration. It's the mechanical transfer of energy through a medium.
Right.
So to vibrate that volume of dense salt water and to physically push a wave that powerful into the SOFAR channel, you require a massive resonating chamber.
A huge body, basically.
Yeah. Exactly. A small creature simply cannot produce a low-frequency bass note that travels 3,000 miles. The physics of wavelengths strictly prohibit it.
So if it was an animal?
If the source of the sound was biological, the entity producing it must, by sheer necessity of physics, be of a scale that makes a blue whale look small.
And that terrifying thought brings us straight to the most fiercely contested part of document N09823B, the debate.
This scientific rift.
Yeah, because when an anomaly that massive happens, an institution like NOAA can't just shrug. They have to provide an official answer.
Yeah.
And the answer they provided caused a war within the scientific community that this leaked dossier lays out in stark detail.
We have the official explanation and then the dissenting analysis.
Right. So let's start with the official narrative. What did NOAA say it was?
So NOAA eventually concluded, after years of analyzing the data, that the sound was a massive icequake.
An icequake.
Right. Specifically, they pointed to the process of glacial calving. This is when colossal shelves of ice physically fracture, shear off the continent of Antarctica, and drag along the seabed.
And look, from a purely geological standpoint, I want to make sure we give that theory its fair due. Because an icequake of that scale, that is a violent, massive planetary event, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. When a piece of ice the size of a small country breaks away from a glacier, the kinetic energy released is almost unfathomable.
Right. It's millions of tons of ice moving at once.
The ice fractures, the water rushes in violently to fill the void, and as that sheer mass of ice scrapes across the rocky continental shelf, it generates massive, ultra-low-frequency acoustic waves.
And that happens pretty often, right?
These events happen frequently in the Southern Ocean, yes.
No.
And they produce immense amounts of acoustic energy that can easily travel into the SOFAR channel. So as an explanation, it is a highly logical, geophysically sound deduction.
But the dossier doesn't stop with that official conclusion. It outlines the intense, documented dissent from marine biologists and acoustic analysts who looked at the exact same raw data from 1997.
And their argument is fascinating.
It really is. Their argument rests entirely on the specific shape of the sound. They argued that if you look at a spectrograph, an icequake looks completely, fundamentally different from what the hydrophones actually recorded.
Yes.
So let's break that down for the listener. What is a spectrograph, and what does a massive icequake actually look like on one?
Sure. So a spectrograph is essentially a visual map of sound. It charts time on one axis, frequency, which is the pitch, on another axis, and it uses color or intensity to show the amplitude or the volume.
So it's basically a picture of noise.
Exactly. When scientists analyze an audio file, they aren't just putting on headphones and listening with their ears. They are looking at the math of the sound wave.
Okay, so what does the math of breaking ice look like?
Well, when millions of tons of ice fracture and scrape across rock, the resulting acoustic signature is completely chaotic. It is what we call broadband noise.
Broadband meaning it's just everywhere.
Right. It spans a wide, messy range of frequencies simultaneously. It lacks internal structure. So on a spectrograph, a massive glacial calving looks like a violent, jagged, disorganized smear of acoustic energy.
It's just pure kinetic noise, like dropping a boulder onto a concrete floor.
Exactly. There's no pattern to it. An icequake sound wave cannot be easily broken down into clean, repeating sine waves. It's a complex, unpredictable waveform.
But, and here's the kicker, the biologists looking at the 1997 data argued that the bloop did not look like a jagged smear.
No, it didn't.
The dossier states that the sound profile perfectly matched a living organism. It had sweeping frequencies. So how does a biological sound differ mathematically from a geological one?
Biological sounds, whether it's a bird singing in a tree, a human speaking, or a whale moaning in the ocean, they all have distinct, predictable structures. They are harmonic.
Harmonic meaning?
They feature frequency-modulated sweeps. This means the sound smoothly transitions from one pitch to another in a controlled, fluid wave.
It's intense.
Yes. It implies an organic mechanism. It implies an intentional push of air, a muscle physically contracting around a vocal cord, a deliberate modulation of a biological organ.
Wow.
And the acoustic analysts who dissented from NOAA's official icequake conclusion, they pointed out that the 1997 anomaly started at a specific frequency, smoothly swept downward over the course of about a minute, and featured the exact kind of harmonic overtones you only see in marine mammal vocalizations.
Wait. If icequakes happen all the time in the Southern Ocean, and we just established that we have thousands of recordings of them, why was this specific recording so hard for the experts to agree on? Like, doesn't a harmonic sweep look obviously different from a chaotic broadband fracture?
It's an excellent question, and it is the absolute crux of the debate in the dossier.
So how do the icequake defenders explain the sweep?
The defense of the icequake theory is that ice dynamics are incredibly complex. If a massive, uniquely shaped block of ice catches on the seabed and drags at a very, very specific velocity, it can theoretically create a resonant frequency.
Like it's vibrating.
Exactly. The ice can essentially act like a massive bow being dragged across the string of a giant cello.
Okay, that is a crazy image.
It is. This phenomenon is known as a harmonic tremor, and theoretically it can mimic the sweeping, structured look of a biological call on a spectrograph.
Okay, so a glacier dragging on the ocean floor could theoretically sing like a cello. I admit that is completely fascinating. But the biologists in this leaked file clearly didn't buy that specific chain of events.
Not at all.
They looked at that harmonic sweep and concluded that it was an animal, and not just any animal. The document explicitly uses the phrase, and this is a quote, "an organism of terrifying titanic proportions, hundreds of feet long."
Yeah, that language is directly in the file.
And I think this is where the tension in document N09823B really peaks for me, because if the acoustic signature perfectly matches a living creature, isn't calling it a singing iceberg just the scientific equivalent of whistling past the graveyard?
Well, you have to look at the institutional momentum here.
Are they just defaulting to geology because the biological alternative is just too terrifying to put in an official government report?
It's a fundamental clash of scientific paradigms. You have two entirely different disciplines looking at the same piece of raw data and bringing their own biases to the table.
Right.
For the geophysicists, an icequake, even a highly unusual one that mimics a biological sweep, fits neatly within the established boundaries of Earth science. It requires complex modeling, sure, but it doesn't rewrite the fundamental laws of biology.
Right. It's just a weird rock and ice interaction.
But for the marine biologists, honoring the literal interpretation of that spectrograph data means admitting something deeply, deeply unsettling.
But there's a monster down there.
That there is an undocumented biological entity, potentially hundreds of feet long, actively roaming the Pacific Ocean.
Which requires a total, from the ground up rewriting of our biological models. I mean, you can't just drop an apex predator 3 times the size of a blue whale into the ocean without rethinking the entire global ecosystem.
You really can't.
And I think that's exactly why the debate in this dossier is so incredibly fierce. It isn't just a nerdy argument about audio analysis software. It's a fundamental argument about what we are mentally prepared to accept about our own planet.
Exactly.
Because if the biologists are right and a true leviathan exists, it begs a massive, unavoidable logistical question. How does an ecosystem at that depth support a high-calorie apex predator?
It needs fuel.
A lot of fuel. What is it eating? And how is it surviving the pressure we talked about earlier, the styrofoam cup pressure?
And to answer that, the dossier actually moves from the 1997 anomaly into the documented hard evidence of deep-sea ecology. Because while we haven't found a leviathan, we have found life.
Right, Section 4 of the document.
Yes, it outlines recent deep-sea expeditions that actually managed to push remote cameras down into the Haddle Zone, the absolute deepest, darkest trenches on Earth, and they didn't find a barren, crushed wasteland.
No, they found alien life.
They found thriving, bizarre ecosystems.
The document specifically references these discoveries, like the ghost fish and giant amphipods.
Huh.
And I want to dig into the biochemistry of this right now.
It's fascinating biology.
Because earlier we established that the pressure at these depths shrinks a styrofoam cup down to a thimble. It physically crushes cells. It crushes proteins.
Yeah.
So how does a vertebrate, like a fish, literally keep its own DNA from folding in on itself?
The biochemistry of survival in the deep ocean is honestly one of the most remarkable fields of study we have. At thousands of atmospheres of pressure, the sheer physical weight of the water actually forces water molecules into the internal structure of proteins.
Then what does that do?
It causes them to denature. They essentially unravel, lose their shape, and stop functioning entirely. Life should be impossible.
But it isn't.
But it isn't. To combat this, deep-sea creatures like the ghost fish, which is a fascinating part of the snailfish family, they utilize something called piezolites.
Piezolites. Okay, what
Yeah.
are those?
Piezolites are highly specialized organic molecules that act as chemical scaffolding. The most prominent one we see is called trimethylamine N-oxide, or TMAO for short.
TMAO. Okay.
These deep-sea organisms absolutely saturate their own tissues with TMAO, and this molecule strongly binds to water, which prevents the extreme hydrostatic pressure from forcing the water molecules into the proteins.
Oh.
It literally stabilizes the cellular structure from the inside out. In fact, scientists have found a direct, measurable linear correlation. The deeper a fish lives, the higher the concentration of TMAO in its bodily tissues.
So they are actively, chemically reinforcing their own cells against the crushing weight of the entire ocean.
They are.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
And the dossier notes that these adaptations go way beyond just cellular chemistry, right? The physical structure of the ghost fish has entirely adapted to the pressure and the absolute darkness.
Oh, visually, they are completely alien. They have evolved away from rigid skeletal structures entirely.
Because bone would just snap.
Exactly. When you live in an environment where pressure wants to snap rigid objects, flexibility is survival. So their bones are highly cartilaginous, their bodies are gelatinous, almost soft, and they have absolutely no scales.
They don't need to see, I'm assuming.
Well, in the abyssal and Haddle zones where sunlight has literally never existed, producing pigmentation or complex eyes is a massive waste of biological energy, so they're completely translucent. You can see right through them.
That's eerie.
And their eyes are either vestigial or they are completely blind. They navigate and they hunt entirely through vibration and chemoreception in a world of perpetual night.
Just feeling the water move around them.
Exactly.
And the ghost fish isn't even the only thing thriving down there. The dossier heavily highlights giant amphipods. Now, for you listening, an amphipod is essentially a crustacean.
Think of a tiny shrimp.
Right. If you go to a regular beach, you might see tiny amphipods like sand fleas hopping around in the seaweed. They are maybe a few millimeters long. Tiny little thing.
Very small.
But the ones documented in the deep trenches, they exhibit a phenomenon that just forces us to rethink all our biological limits.
The phenomenon is called deep-sea gigantism.
Gigantism.
Yes. In the shallow waters, like you mentioned, amphipods are basically microscopic. But in the extreme depths of the Mariana Trench, researchers have retrieved living specimens that are nearly a foot long.
A foot-long sand flea. That is nightmare fuel.
They are massive, heavily armored, highly efficient scavengers. And the biological drivers for this gigantism are really complex, but they generally revolve around metabolic efficiency.
Wait, how does being massive make you more efficient? In an environment where food is supposedly super scarce, wouldn't a bigger body just require way more calories?
You would think so, but it relates to a unique combination of extreme cold temperatures and dissolved oxygen levels.
Okay.
In the deep ocean, the temperature hovers just a fraction above freezing. This drastically slows down their metabolic rate.
So they burn fewer calories.
Exactly. And a slower metabolism means they live much, much longer. And because they live longer, they just continue to grow over an extended lifespan.
Oh, I see.
Additionally, larger body sizes are actually more energy efficient for foraging over vast, barren stretches of the ocean floor. Their volume to surface area ratio allows them to conserve heat and biological energy much better than a small organism could.
So we have a scientifically proven rule here, documented in this leaked file. In the extreme depths of the ocean, evolution takes a microscopic millimeter-long sand flea and turns it into a giant foot-long armored scavenger.
It scales them up dramatically.
Right. That gigantism is an evolutionary strategy for surviving the dark and the cold, which, well, it brings me to a deeply unsettling extrapolation based on the contents of this file.
I think I know where you're going with this.
If evolution in the deep ocean creates giant armored amphipods and gelatinous ghost fish just to survive the pressure,
Yeah.
what kind of horrifying evolutionary adaptations would a predator hundreds of feet long need to have?
That is the ultimate question.
If deep-sea gigantism is a biological reality for invertebrates,
Mm-hmm.
what is the theoretical ceiling for evolutionary size in a biome that is entirely separated from the surface world?
Well, the primary limiting factor for size in any ecosystem anywhere on Earth is the food web, the energetic requirements.
The calorie count.
Right. If an ecosystem thrives, there must be a massive mechanism of energy transfer. In the deep ocean, the baseline of this food web is often something we call marine snow.
Marine snow.
It's a continuous, slow shower of organic detritus falling from the upper, sunlit layers of the ocean. Dead algae, fecal matter, decomposing organisms. It just falls for weeks until it hits the bottom.
Gross, but effective.
Very effective. You also have chemosynthetic bacteria clustered around hydrothermal vents, converting toxic minerals directly into usable energy.
Right, so the giant amphipods eat the marine snow and the vent bacteria?
Yes.
And then the ghosts eat the amphipods.
Yeah.
But ecology dictates that a thriving food web usually culminates in an apex predator. If the biological theory of the 1997 anomaly is correct, and there really is a creature hundreds of feet long roaming the Pacific, the caloric intake required to sustain a mass that large would be astronomical.
It would be off the charts.
So what on earth is it hunting? How does a titanic creature sustain itself in 95% unexplored territory?
It points to the existence of entire swarms of massive deep-sea life that we simply haven't even cataloged yet.
Swarms of them.
Think about it. We know giant squid exist, right? We found their beaks in the stomachs of sperm whales. We know colossal squid exist in the deep.
Right.
To support a titanic, ultra-low-frequency vocalizing predator, that 95% blind spot of the ocean must be actively teeming with massive energy-dense prey.
It would have to feed on huge schools of deep-sea cephalopods, or entirely undocumented megafauna that never, ever venture above the bathypelagic zone.
It survives because it hides. It exists in a domain where it has absolute mastery, far, far beyond the physical reach of our fragile, tethered cameras.
It's just an incredible chain of logic to follow, and it shows exactly why the debate in document N09823B is still so intensely relevant today.
It's a completely unresolved scientific puzzle.
Because look at what we've established. We know the pressure of the Mariana Trench forces radical physical adaptations.
Yes.
We know life uses specialized chemistry, like TMAO, to survive crushing depths. We know deep-sea gigantism is a proven, documented biological rule.
We have the specimens to prove it.
And we know for a fact that in acoustic waves possessing the exact harmonic structure of a living vocalization and the raw physical power to travel 3,000 miles swept through our blind microphones in 1997.
The data is undeniable.
So when you lay out the physics and the biology side by side like that, the debate between a singing iceberg and a biological titan, it isn't just a fringe conspiracy, it becomes a legitimate scientific standoff.
It represents the ultimate confrontation with the limits of human knowledge. This dossier forces us to acknowledge that our perceived mastery of the Earth is largely an illusion.
An illusion confined to the dry land.
The dry land and the very shallow sunlit waters near the coasts. Beneath that incredibly thin layer is a massive three-dimensional void governed by alien physics, crushing hydrostatic pressure, and completely undocumented biology.
So let's pull all the threads of this leaked dossier together for you listening. Document N09823B gives us a raw, unfiltered look at an oceanic war room grappling with the impossible.
It really does.
We live on a planet where 95% of the living space is a complete void to us, a massive blind spot. Within that blind spot lies a trench deep enough to swallow Everest without breaking the surface.
An incredible scale.
And out of that impenetrable darkness came an event that shattered our acoustic models, triggering a fierce, unresolved debate over whether we were listening to a continent breaking apart or a leviathan calling out in the dark.
Both theories are scientifically fascinating. Both of them demand a deep respect for the sheer scale of the natural world.
The facts of the leak are indisputable, right? The staggering depth, the unmapped volume, the complex biochemical adaptations of deep-sea life, and the undeniable recording of a massive, ultra-low frequency wave propagating through the SOFAR channel.
How the scientific community interprets those exact facts highlights the incredible tension we have between seeking safe geological order and confronting the terrifying, beautiful chaos of deep-sea biology.
And that brings me to one final lingering thought I want to leave you with after this investigation.
Yeah.